First of all, thank you, Andrew, for inviting me here, and I feel very honored to be here today, like all of us. I'm going to try to cover more than 30 years of work in a relatively short period of time. But I'm passionate about it because, you know, we tend to think of advances in medicine as being a new drug, a new laser, something really high-tech and expensive. And we often have a hard time believing that the simple choices that we make in our lives each day, like what we eat and how we respond to stress and how much exercise we get and whether or not we smoke and how much love and intimacy we have, that these simple choices can make such a powerful difference, but they really do. And in our studies, we've used these very high-tech, expensive, state-of-the-art measures to prove the power of these very low-tech and low-cost and often ancient interventions. But I want to start by saying, since it's this particular session is on healthy desserts, is what is it that enables people to make and maintain changes in their lifestyles and to sustain them? You know, there are a lot of people who think it's about fear, but it's really about joy and freedom and pleasure are really what enable us to make sustainable changes. It's not, you know, these false choices that people have. So, you know, is it fun for me or is it good for me? You know, I have to choose. You know, am I going to live longer or is it just going to seem longer if I live healthily? You know, those aren't the choices. Because what we're finding is that even the language of behavioral change has these, you know, it's hard for me to go out to dinner with someone without they're either apologizing for what they're eating or commenting what I'm eating, and then, you know, I say, I don't care what you eat, you know, it's your business. But the language of behavioral change has this moralistic quality. You know, I eat bad food, so it's a very small step to saying I'm a bad person, and then you might as well finish the pint of ice cream. Even the language that we use to talk about behavioral change, of patient compliance, is such a manipulative word. It's very fascist. It's about forcing people to change or manipulating. That's not sustainable either. What's sustainable, again, is freedom and pleasure and joy. And so the spectrum approach says there are no good foods or bad foods, but some foods are healthier for you than others. And to the degree that you move in a healthy direction, there's a corresponding benefit. Whereas if it's a diet you're on, it's a diet you're going to get off. The whole concept of diet is about what you can't have and what you must do, and that's not sustainable. Risk factor reduction just sounds boring to people. They say, you know, I don't care if I live longer, I just want to enjoy my life. And I say, you know what, me too. That's why I make these changes, because when you make these changes, you feel so much better so quickly. It reframes the reason for making these changes from fear of dying to joy of living. And it's joy of living that's really sustainable, as opposed to the cartoon where she says, I give smokers a discount because there's not as much to tell. That doesn't work very well. Because there's no point in giving up something that you enjoy unless you get something back that's better and quickly. And people often say, oh, people can't change, you know, it's too hard. But you know what? People change all the time. I mean, you probably change all the time. How many of you have at least one child? I'm just curious. Raise your hand. Was that a big change in your lifestyle? Yeah. Was it harder than you thought? How many of you have more than one kid? Did you forget? Or were you just careless? You know. This is my wife, Ann, and my son, Lucas, who's been here the whole conference. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done, and it's the most wonderful thing I've ever done. We have a new 4-month-old baby, Jasmine, now because of that. And that's the point, is that people aren't afraid to make big changes if we can help them connect the dots between what they do and how they feel. And so the spectrum is on ideas that all foods are included, but some foods are healthier for you than others. They're not good or bad, but so I've categorized foods from the most helpful to the least helpful and say, you can personalize this, and to the degree that you move in a healthy direction, there's a corresponding benefit. What matters most is your overall way of eating and living. So if you indulge yourself one day, eat healthier the next. It's not all or nothing. And there's a nutrition spectrum, there's an exercise spectrum. The more you exercise, the more you do stress management, and the more love and intimacy you have, then the better you're off. It's not all or nothing. Everything is included. And because of that, it's sustainable, because it's all about freedom and joy and pleasure. But the more you change, the more you move in a healthy direction, and the more different things you change, the better you feel, and the more objective measures we can show. And this is what we found over and over again. And that surprised me, because I thought the younger people who had less severe disease would be more likely to show improvement. But I was wrong. The more you change, the better you get. Now, I've been in a lot of the diet wars over the years, but there's an emerging consensus about what really constitutes a healthy way of eating and living. And what I find really encouraging is that it's not just what you exclude from your diet that's harmful, but also what you include that's beneficial. There are hundreds of thousands of protective substances like phytochemicals and bioflavonoids and carotenoids and retinols and isoflavones and genistein and on and on and on. Where do you find them? You generally find them in fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, soy products, the usual suspects. You want to eat more of the good carbs, the unrefined carbs, like whole wheat and things in their natural forms, and avoid more of the harmful carbs. I don't like using the word bad carbs because, again, it applies to moral judgment, but the ones that aren't as healthy for you, like sugar and white flour and white rice. You want to avoid red meat for lots of reasons. You want to avoid the processed foods the way that Michael Pollan and others were talking about earlier today. You want to avoid the bad fats, the trans fats, the saturated fats, and the partially hydrogenated fats, and eat more of the good fats, the omega-3 fatty acids that you find in fish oil and flaxseed oil. Just 3 grams a day can reduce sudden cardiac death by up to 80%, can reduce prostate and breast cancer. If you take them when you're pregnant, it can make your kids smarter by 7 to 10 IQ points. So if you don't remember anything else today, take 3 grams a day of fish oil. It's a really good thing. You want to eat fewer calories overall, and especially of the simple carbs. And you want to eat quality over quantity. And when you do, because if you pay attention to what you're eating, it's not just what you eat, it's also how you eat. If you can eat mindfully, if you go through a bag of popcorn while watching a movie, you can look down, the bag of popcorn's empty. It's like, who ate this? You get all the calories and none of the pleasure. If you really focus on what you're eating, people like to talk about the French paradox. To me, it's because in France, besides the fact that you're eating with a loving group of community, and more often than not, but you're really savoring the food and really enjoying each bite. And then you get much more pleasure with many fewer calories if you really focus on what you're eating. I also want to talk about how dynamic these changes are. And part of what was really encouraging to me is that your body has a remarkable capacity to begin healing itself, and much more quickly if you stop doing what's causing the problem. Your body can often begin to heal. And everything that we've been doing for the 30 years we've been doing this work was thought impossible at the time, and we're able to show how quickly and how dynamic these processes are and how fast your body can begin to heal. So when you eat healthier, when you manage stress, when you exercise, when you love more, your brain gets more blood and more oxygen, so you think more clearly, you have more energy, you need less sleep. So you feel better very quickly. It happens within hours. Everyone's had the opposite experience. You have a big Thanksgiving feast, you want to take a nap an hour or two later because your brain's getting less blood flow. Now, just 10 years ago, it was thought impossible that you only had a certain number of brain cells, and if you went out and had a drinking binge or had a good party, you wouldn't, you're just a few 100,000 cells gone, you'll never get them back. The good news is that your brain can regenerate itself. It's called neuroplasticity. And the latest studies are showing that in just a few months, you can grow so many new brain cells that your brain gets measurably bigger. I mean, that was thought, a wild idea just a decade ago. And what's nice also is, again, what you include is as important what you exclude. Some of my favorite foods, like chocolate and tea and blueberries, can increase neurogenesis, whereas saturated fat and sugar are not only bad for your heart, they're bad for your brain as well. Moderate alcohol increases neurogenesis. Excessive kills your brain cells. Stress management can increase your brain size. Chronic stress can decrease it. Moderate exercise increases neurogenesis. Sedentary lifestyle decreases it. Now, I showed this slide at the TED Talk a year ago, and I got more correspondence and more articles about this one comment, that cannabinoids can actually increase neurogenesis, than anything I've ever talked about. I'm just the messenger here, but anyway, there it is. What were we just talking about? Never mind. And just walking for 3 hours a week, and not even all that fast, can cause so many new brain cells to grow that your brain can get measurably bigger. Tango, this is my wife and I when we found out we were pregnant, or she was pregnant, to be honest, went to Buenos Aires and danced the tango. That increases neurogenesis as well. So some of the most fun things in life, again, are the healthiest. So you don't have these false choices. Is it fun for me or is it good for me? It can be both. Chronic stress, the more stressed you are, the more it decreases your brain size, particularly in the hippocampus, which controls memory, which is why when you're under a lot of chronic stress, it's often hard to remember things. When you change your lifestyle, your skin gets more blood, so you don't age as quickly. You look better, you feel better, your heart gets more blood. We've shown that you can actually reverse even severe heart disease when you change your lifestyle, and much more quickly. Just in a month, you can show improved blood flow to the heart. The chest pain goes away. This is a slide where we looked at angiograms showing the amount of blockage in the arteries in the upper left became wider, less clogged after just a year. In the lower left is a cardiac PET scan. Blue and black is no blood flow in the lower left at the beginning. The lower right, you can see, is almost normal, where orange and white is maximal blood flow. So you don't have to wait that long, even if you've had a lifetime of damage, to show the benefits. And overall, the blockages from beginning to 1 year to 5 years got worse and worse in the group that made only moderate changes in lifestyle who had heart disease. But they got better and better in the group who made more intensive changes. Now, I want to just show you a 3-minute video. This is like the worst graphics and the least imaginative shooting. But the content, I think, is so inspiring. This was at a hospital that we've trained about 50 hospitals through our nonprofit institute. We train hospitals at no cost, and we license them at no cost, because we just want to get it out there because we're so passionate about what a difference this can make. And I just want to show you this little 3-minute clip because it makes it real about how much difference this can make in someone's life. And this is not our best case. This is representative of the kinds of changes that we see that most doctors, unfortunately, don't have that experience. So if you could show the video, we'll do that.
I began to see some real transforming physical things happening to me. First thing is I've lost 50 pounds. If anybody looking for an inexpensive wardrobe, let me know. The 7th week that I was in the program, my angina disappeared, just 7 weeks in. I thought that was a little bit too good to be true, but it was, and things like that have been happening ever since. I'll just give you my vital statistics here. My ejection fraction has increased from 45% to 61%. I lost 50 pounds. My triglycerides are down from 819 to 93. My cholesterol is down from 243 to 110. My HDL is up from 27 to 38. My PSA even went down. I'm no longer using a cane or a wheelchair. In November of 2001, I was using a cane to walk with, and I had to have the humiliating experience of riding a wheelchair around Walmart. Now, I didn't like that. I wasn't going to settle for that. I knew there must be a better way. And thank God I found a better way. I no longer have to take my diabetes medication. In fact, my total medication has been reduced by 75%. I had trouble getting to my mailbox without having chest pain. But now I'm walking at least 2 miles a day. I ride my stationary bike anywhere from 8 to 10 miles a day. At our American Heart Association Health Walk here a few months ago, I walked 2 miles in that and felt like the Energizer Bunny. I still wanted to keep going.
Now, what sustains that is feeling good. And if you were to the point where you literally couldn't walk across the street without getting chest pain, and you change your diet and lifestyle, and essentially you're pain-free, and you can do pretty much whatever you want, people say things like, yeah, I like eating cheeseburgers, but not that much, because you feel so much better. You can connect the dots between what you do and how you feel, for better and for worse. And we published these findings in JAMA, Circulation, Lancet, New England Journal, and so on. And we found even more reversal after 5 years than after 1 year. So the more you do it, the better you get. And the longer you do it, generally, the better you get. Here again, this is a correlation between the degree of change in lifestyle and the degree of change in blockages. I got this as a Christmas card a couple of years ago from 2 of the men in one of the hospitals we trained in New York at Beth Israel. The younger brother on the left is 88, and the one on the right is 92. They wanted to show me how much more flexible they were after doing their yoga. And the next year, they sent me this one, which I thought was pretty funny. You just never know. This is an unretouched photo, how much better people can get. We also found there was a 40% reduction in the cholesterol level. This is comparable to what you can get with statins, but without the cost and we've spent $20 billion last year just on Lipitor in this country. Your sexual organs get more blood flow. Works the same way that Viagra does. This was one of the most effective anti-smoking ads. It doesn't say emphysema, heart attack, lung cancer. It says impotence, because half of guys who smoke are impotent. How sexy is that? Christy Turlington, the supermodel, has this wonderful website called smokingisugly.com because the nicotine makes your arteries in your face, your arterioles, and the capillaries constrict, so you age 10 or 20 years faster. So instead of making you sexy and beautiful, it makes you ugly and impotent. That's a much more powerful message to give teenagers and say, you're going to live to be 86 instead of 85, which really doesn't motivate most people, you know, often even when they're 85, but particularly when they're teenagers. And we also found that you can stop or reverse the progression of prostate cancer and, by extension, breast cancer. In a study we did in collaboration with the chair of urology at UCSF, Peter Carroll, and the then chair, who unfortunately has died of colon cancer since then, Dr. Bill Fair at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. And we found that PSA levels went down in the group that changed. They went up or got worse in the group that made more conventional changes. And again, we found the same relationship. The more people changed, the lower their PSA went. And their prostate tumor in vitro was inhibited 70%, whereas in the comparison group, it didn't make such intensive changes hardly at all. So again, that's just in the space of a year. You don't have to wait that long to see that. And the latest randomized trials have shown that for most men who have prostate cancer, they're more likely to die with it than from it. And the treatments leave most men either impotent or incontinent or both. So these lifestyle changes turned out to be not only as effective, but in some cases even better than drugs and surgery. And we have found, again, the more people change their lifestyle, the more directly inhibited their tumor growth. And we did MRI and MR spectroscopy in some of the patients. The tumor activity is shown in red here. And you can see that not only did the PSA go down, but the tumor activity diminished as well. So again, just by changing lifestyle, people have a hard time saying, you mean that's just changing my diet and lifestyle can cause all these things to happen? But it does. And it's not like there's one diet for heart disease and another one for prostate cancer and another one for diabetes. It's the same one. It's just a healthy way of eating and living. Now, I want to focus on, again, the primary determinant of improvement was how much people change. And that's the scientific basis of the spectrum. The more you change, the better you get. How much you change, how many things you want to change are really up to you. But again, the more you change, the better you get. It's a very powerful, very empowering, very hopeful message to give people. Now, we published a study last year in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences where we found that when you change your lifestyle, it actually changes your genes. And so often I hear people say, oh, I've got bad genes, what can I do? Well, it turns out you can do a lot. We found over 500 genes were changed in just 3 months. 3 months. Again, that was not thought possible before. And the genes that we change are the ones you want to change. We turn on the good genes that protect you. We turn off the genes, the oncogenes that promote prostate cancer, breast cancer, the genes that promote oxidative stress and chronic inflammation that in turn promote heart disease. In every case where we could identify the gene, it went in the good direction. Now, this is what's called a heat map, which is just a way of displaying a lot of data. And on the left is before, and it's mostly green. Green is turned on, turned off. And, red is turned on and green is turned off. And you can see how after 3 months, it went from mostly red to mostly green. And again, all the genes, these are all oncogenes that control breast and prostate cancer. Another study that was done by a different group of investigators, Jeff Dusek, found that just meditation alone caused changes in gene expression. And it was that same dose-response effect. The more people, the 8 weeks of meditators, if you can see the downregulating went from, on the top, from red to kind of green to green, and at the bottom from green to kind of red to red. That's the beginning. The non-meditators, the people who've been meditating for 8 weeks, and the advanced meditators who've been doing it for years. Again, meditation can affect your genes in just 3 months, in this case, in just 8 weeks. So powerful changes from outcomes from simple changes. We published a study in the Lancet Oncology last year with Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn, who won the Nobel Prize in Medicine a couple of weeks ago for her discovery of telomerase. Telomerase is an enzyme that lengthens our telomeres, which are the ends of our chromosomes that control how long we live. They control aging. And she did a study a few years ago where she found with Dr. Alyssa Epple that women who were under chronic emotional stress had lower telomerase and shorter telomeres. So it was the first evidence showing that chronic emotional stress may actually shorten your lifespan and give a mechanism for that. And so we were at a conference together. I said, you know, most things in biology go both ways. If bad things are caused by, to telomeres by chronic stress, what if we do good things? And what we found was that, again, after just 3 months, we found that telomerase and thus telomere length increased by almost a third, by 30%. And even pharma drugs have not been shown to do that. So here again, lifestyle can not only be as good, but in this case, even better than drugs. So our genes are a predisposition, but our genes are not our fate. And I think that's, again, a very motivating message to give people. Because, again, lifestyle changes can not only be as good, but even better than drugs. This was a study in the New England Journal of Medicine comparing lifestyle with a diabetes drug called metformin or with placebo, and they found that the lifestyle changes actually worked even better at a fraction of the cost And in fact, the side effects, I mean, the potential reduction of the complications of diabetes, the eye, nerve, kidney damage, heart disease, works even better with lifestyle than with drugs because you can control your blood sugar much more closely by lifestyle changes. Lifestyle changes can be synergistic with drugs. This is a study by John Kabat-Zinn who found that meditation plus a drug cause psoriasis to clear much faster than the drug alone. So it's not one or the other. Meditation increases antibody titers to influenza vaccines. So here again, it's synergistic. You don't have to say, is it one versus the other? It can often be both. Now, moving into health reform, because these have a lot of implications, my concern about health reform has been, we've been focusing on the 46 million people who don't have health insurance, which we clearly need to get into the system. But if we don't also change what we're doing, what we're covering, not just who we're covering, then if we just do more bypasses and angioplasties and so on 46 million more people, then costs go up exponentially. And then we have these painful choices. Do we ration or raise taxes or let the deficit go up? None of them are very good. It's threatening the viability of health reform. But if we can change lifestyle as treatment, not just as prevention, then we can actually make better care available at lower cost. Now, many people are surprised to find that 3/4 of the $2.1 trillion in healthcare costs, which Senator Harkin calls sick care costs, are from just chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, prostate or breast cancer, and obesity, all of which can not only be prevented, but even reversed simply by changing lifestyle. Now, in this sense, lifestyle can be prevention, but it's also treatment. And people have a hard time thinking about lifestyle as treatment. And so most of the health reform bill, when it talks about prevention, is really early detection, like mammograms and PSAs. It's good to find cancer earlier. It's even better to prevent it. And that's what really, early detection is not the same as prevention. Now, heart disease, as I mentioned, is not only preventable in most cases, but it's even reversible. But many people don't know that heart and blood vessel diseases kill more people each year than everything else combined, and yet, because we're so busily mopping up the floor rather than turning off the faucet, literally or figuratively bypassing the problem, we're not really addressing the underlying cause. Now, that's important because heart disease, although it kills more people than everything else combined, is almost completely preventable for 95% of people. It's a staggering statistic. The disease that kills more people than everything else combined is almost completely preventable. We don't need to wait for a new breakthrough or a new drug. We just need to put into practice what we already know. Now, another study came out just this year, and they found that just exercising, not smoking, eating a healthy diet prevented most diabetes, as well as heart attacks, strokes, and many cancers as well. Powerful effects from these simple changes. Now, how do we treat heart disease in this country? We mainly do it with drugs and surgery. Last year, we spent $60 billion on angioplasties and stents, where you blow up a balloon and squish the blockage or put a stent in to keep the artery open. Now, that might be worth it if they worked. But many people are really shocked. I was shocked to find that in the New England Journal of Medicine a year and a half ago, in a very carefully done $40 million randomized trial of several thousand people, angioplasties did not prevent heart attacks and did not prolong life compared to just people who got drugs, not even compared to people who made lifestyle changes. Now, you would think if we're really practicing evidence-based medicine, people would stop doing them, unless you're in the middle of having a heart attack, which only 2 or 3% of people are. For the other 95%, they don't. And they say, see this blockage, we can fix it, or we can go die, what do you want us to do? And generally, people say, fix it, but it doesn't really do much, and that's been the problem. So it's really not so much evidence-based medicine, but more often reimbursement-driven. Now, we've done a series of demonstration projects where we found that changing lifestyle was not only medically effective, but it was also cost effective. We've done 3 demonstration projects, and we've shown that these really work. The first was with Mutual of Omaha, where they found that most patients who were told they needed a bypass or angioplasty were able to safely avoid it, and they saved almost $30,000 per patient in the first year. The second study was done with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Pennsylvania. They found they cut their costs in half in the first year and by an additional 20 to 30% in subsequent years. And finally, after 16 years, Medicare is now paying for programs like this, which again, we're open sourcing because we want to get out there. We worked at the worksite with Safeway. We found that we could lower the costs there. Healthcare costs are reaching a tipping point. Starbucks finds they spend more money for healthcare than for coffee beans. Mars for more for healthcare than for candy. So there's a convergence of forces that make the receptivity to these ideas more than they had been. I worked with President Clinton and the Heart Association and the soft drink bottlers to get the soft drinks out of schools and to put healthier snacks in the vending machines, always looking for leverage points. And what we found in the Medicare demonstration project is weight fell strikingly, angina fell strikingly, ability to exercise increased, depression fell, and quality of life improved. Blood pressure fell, both systolic and by diastolic, to the point where most people could get off their medications. People could get off their diabetes medications as well. And as Michael Pollan said, this may be the first generation in which our kids live a shorter lifespan than their parents. The time is now to begin making these changes because they work. Everything is reaching a tipping point, whether it's the costs or whether it's other factors. And as he talked about, what's personally sustainable is also globally sustainable, because so much of global warming is caused by livestock and it takes so much more energy, as well as being a major cause of deforestation. There's also this globalization of illness that's occurring as other countries are starting to eat like us and live like us and die like us, and so there's an opportunity to make a difference. The other epidemic that I want to close with is depression and loneliness. The #1 prescription drug last year and for the last several years has been antidepressants. And that's important because if information were enough to cause people to change their lifestyle, nobody would smoke. It's not like people don't know any better. But I'd ask people, why do you smoke? And why do you overeat and drink too much and work too hard and abuse substances? And they'd say, because they help me get through the day. I've got 20 friends in this pack of cigarettes, one patient told me. They're always there for me, and nobody else is. You're going to take away my 20 friends? Or food fills the void, or alcohol numbs the pain, or video games numb the pain, or working too hard numbs the pain. And so we need to work at a deeper level, not just on the information, but also these deeper issues. And when we do, we find that we can help people use the experience of suffering as a doorway for transforming their lives. And they often say things like, having a heart attack was the best thing that ever happened to me. You say, what, are you nuts? And they say, no, that's what it took to get my attention that's made such a meaningful difference in my life. Anything that promotes intimacy is healing. And all of us here are here because we're trying to make a difference in the world. And the kinds of things that we all do in our own ways of bringing people together, this conference that Andrew is doing, bringing people together, is healing. Just being here is healing. The kinds of things that you do with technology to connect people are healing. And you know, the need for connection and community is the unmet need. And you don't even have to do it that well to create a multi-billion-dollar business. Look at the AOL chat rooms initially, or Facebook, or Twitter. You know, most people's Facebook friends are not necessarily the most intimate of life experiences, and yet, even if you can meet that just a little bit, you can make a huge difference. And the last slide I want to show you is, I was on a panel years ago with doing grand rounds at the University of Virginia Medical School with Swami Satchidananda, who I'd studied with for many years, an eminent spiritual teacher. And someone said, hey, Swami, what's the difference between illness and wellness? And he went up on the board, he wrote the word illness and circled the first letter, and then wrote the word wellness and circled the second two. And to me, it's just a beautiful shorthand that anything that we can do together to bring ourselves together, to heal the isolation that separates us, is not only makes us feel good, it's actually healing. People who are lonely and depressed are many times more likely to get sick and die prematurely. And so I just want to end by saying, we're all here today because we were finding ways to connect with each other. I've been so inspired by the presentations that I've heard, and I salute each of you for the work that you're doing to help bring us together, because it's really healing from the root to make whole. Even the word yoga is to unite, to bring together. And so thank you for the chance to be here today. I'm really grateful.